Hey guys, what's up? Eddie Aho here with KissAnalog.com. Uni-T's in the lab. Now, they've already given me, well, they sent all these things at one time. You guys may have seen the stack of stuff they sent me. This power supply here, they call it a 4 output because you have your, your plus and minus, well, your two outputs, your two main outputs, 30 volt, 5 amps. It also has the 0 to 6 volt, 3 amp. So that's adjustable as well. And then they give you the 5 volt USB, okay? And then I've got this benchtop multimeter, really nice. And the oscilloscope back here, really nice scope. I don't know if you guys see that back there. And then I have this that I've kind of held off on doing it last. Okay, now it came in a plastic bag. All right, guys, and inside this thing, I have a certificate of calibration too. I think I took it out and put it on my desk. Anyway, got this little guy so you can download your manuals, and you got a BNC to BNC cable and BNC to alligator and power cable. All right, so let's take this guy out of here like this. Oh, and you know what? Okay, and then I also have this USB to USB. Okay, so yeah, you can talk to it with your computer too if you want, but it's pretty much what they call full size today. It comes in these formats, right? Okay, so it'll fit nicely in that stack. Now, the interesting thing is, oh, it looks like the little plastic thing's been peeled off. It's kind of scuffed a little bit. It's been on a show, electronic show. So, they set this stuff up in a booth so people can buy in, look at it, play with it and stuff. So this one, yeah, it has a screen that's been taken off, and there's a little bit of a scuff here in the front. At least I think the protective cover's off. Maybe that's why it's, oh, you know what? I think it's still on. Okay, we'll peel that off. That's why it looks scuffed so easy, because it's got that soft film. But man, it's hard to even see the film that's on there. It's applied so nicely. This is the UTG1042X, okay? It's 40 megahertz, 200 megasamples per second. So, you might notice this guy here, a Uni-T. Now, I got this a long time ago. Uni-T didn't send that out to me. That I got separately. But if you notice, the display, the buttons, if you notice this, they look pretty much the same, right? Because I think they are. I'm not sure. We'll see when I fire this one up, but I think the size is the same and the buttons are kind of displayed. Now the buttons do look a little bit different on this one, but you got your 6 buttons, same as that one. So, and then you got your keypad, okay? And the mode wave utility, and 2 arrows with your little jog button. So, a little select button, and then you got your 1 and 2 channel on and off, just like that. But instead of having the BNCs on the side, they're on the front. So it's a larger panel. It can fit more things. I mean, this thing is incredibly small, right? That is crazy. Yeah, that is crazy. So it just kind of sits. I like that size. That really is nice. Now this one does have, it's the, I don't even know what this case is called, but it's a format that's been around for a long time. Some of my equipment over here is pretty old, like that guy up there. Same, that one handles a little bit different, but these other guys, this format's been around for a long time. But yeah, there you go. Now this one has a USB-C, it has a USB connector, and the IEC with the fuse. Okay, built-in fuse. So that's about all on the back, and then you got your vent holes on the side. It feels really light. Yeah, it's amazing. This unit right here is pretty amazing. Okay, and this one's also 200 megasamples, but this one's 60 meg, where this one's only 40. I actually wanted, I really asked for this nice unit. A little bit more expensive than this one, but they sent me out this one because I think this is what you've probably seen reviewed on other channels too. They kind of had the same setup they sent out, I believe, but this guy here, I mean, very nice, but I've been, honestly, I've been struggling a little bit on doing the video because I like this one so much because it's so small, and this one's larger, right? Now it does fit better in the stack up like that, where this one, you can't, you know, it's small, really, right? But you can, I like it because I can move around on the bench, and yeah, so I do like that one. But so I'm going to bring the camera over, show you this close. We're going to I'm going to show you a couple things on this guy, but yeah. Here, let me go through some of the prices, okay? This is mostly just a box opening, but I am going to power it up. We're going to look at the display to see if the display is the same, if the firmware, maybe it's set up very much the same as that one. Now, okay, what do you get with this one? Okay, this guy, not as fast as that. This is 60 meg, this is 40 meg. I have an 80 meg Junetech up there, and then I have this Cooltron, which is also, the Cooltron's also a 60 meg, and they're all 2 channels, okay? I had a single channel I bought, and I sold it to a guy, a friend of the channel in Canada. He liked Siglant stuff, so I sold it to him. But I was such a fan of this one, I got that guy, which I think's great, but then I got this one, and I really like this little Uni-T. And then I got that Junetech. Junetech sent that out to me. And that is actually a very nice meter, but it's kind of out of the way because it's over there. That's why this one I use so much. And then that little Cooltron, same kind of thing, very small, easy to move around. But this screen's bigger, so I like that. So now I got another one, this bigger. I mean, same size as that, but I'm going to put it in the stack over here. So, okay, guys. Back in the day, they used to call these function generators. Well, first you'd get a signal generator, put out a sine wave, sometimes another wave, but mostly just sine waves, signal generators. And then they came out function generators. They had square, triangle, and pulse was just another form of the square wave, right? But yeah, that's pretty much it. And then they came out the ARB generators, the arbitrary, generators, where digitally they can pretty much build any waveform. Okay, so back in the day, signal generators, a lot of those were analog. They're they'd make a sine wave as analog amplified. These are digitally, the waveforms are digitally constructed, and you can build your own waveforms, which is really neat. So what comes with digital? They're built in steps, right? So the sine wave, if you zoom in real close, it's like a staircase that goes up and down, right? If you zoom in really close. Now the thing is, if you're looking at it with most scopes, they're only 8-bit scopes. And most of these generators are all 14-bit. So they have better resolution than your scope. So you might not see them. But with a scope like Picotech, or maybe like that 01 that has 14 bits, you could see them. Okay, so let's just talk about the bits. Now, on an 8-bit scope, essentially, whatever voltage waveform, whatever the maximum screen can be broken up into slices of 256. So if you go to 12-bit, then you go to 4096. Huge step up. That's why I've been a big proponent. Love the higher bit, vertical bit scopes. Okay, so your 8-bit scope, 256, right? But if you get a 12-bit scope, you get 4096 steps. So way more, right? A lot more steps. But all these generators are at least 14-bit, okay? So 14 bits gives you 16,000. That's a lot. It's 4 times as much as your 12-bit scope. So the steps are going to be really small. That little, staircase is going to be really teeny steps. All right. Well, this guy's 16-bit. That's a claim to fame for this guy. So that's why this one would cost a little more money, because it's 16-bit. And that goes from 16,384 steps that you get on all these other ones. This guy, you get 65,536. So it's a lot, right? It's like you just went up 4 times again to go to this one from the 14 bits. And 8 times more than your 12-bit scopes. So you get all these different waveforms, right? But here's the other thing is that you can also modulate the waveforms, right? Amplitude modulation, phase modulation, and you can do other kinds of modulation like, okay, amplitude, frequency modulation, phase modulation. You can also do this ASK type modulation or FSK or PSK. You can with the Uni-T, okay? With this guy, you get the FSK, but you don't get the, let me see, you don't get the ASK or the PSK. Okay, so there's a couple modulation things in there that if you're an RF guy or a guy that likes or needs those kind of modulations, you don't get it with this one. With this one, you do. Or with the Uni-T, you do. Okay, so the Uni-T and this guy, you get like all the modulations. Okay, you get all the frequencies. And you get a whole bunch of types of frequencies you can generate. Uni-T's 80 meg. This one's 40 meg, like I said. But that's only 14-bit. This is 16-bit. So there's some differences there, okay? Okay, guys, the other thing to think about when you're looking at one of these generators is the frequency. When you say, oh, this is 40 meg. But one thing that's true with I want to say all generators. I always hate to say all, but most generators, like all of these generators, is they have different specs, different frequencies, max frequencies for the different types of frequencies, or the different waveforms. The sine wave waveform is the easiest one, right? So that one is usually where they're based at. So this is 40 meg. You pretty much guarantee that the sine wave is 40 meg. So let's just look at this. This guy over here, the sine wave is 40 meg. The square wave is 20 meg on that, and the pulse is 20 meg. So you can see the pulse drops down to 20, square is 20, because square and pulse are essentially the same thing, right? Same wave shape. So on this guy, same thing, 40 meg sine, the square and the pulse are 20 meg. So that would make sense. So just for comparison, that Cooltron up there, it's a 60 meg generator. The square is 25 and the pulse is 6. So see how sometimes even the pulse is different for some reason on that one. Might have something to do with the kind of control the duty cycle, because that's the difference of the pulse. I'm not sure, but that's interesting. So pulse is only 6 meg on it. So now that Cooltron is actually pretty inexpensive in comparison to the rest of these, but it's not that less expensive. This, here, let me look at the prices here on this stuff. Okay, so for pricing, the Cooltron's $140. I think you can get it for a little bit less money. I'm not sure. But on Amazon, I think right now it's $140. I'll put the links down below if you guys want to support the channel. Click on those links. It doesn't cost you anything extra. But $140. This one's $182. So under $200 for a pretty amazing generator from Uni-T, the UTG962E. Okay, that's the 60 meg one. Now the Uni-T up there, that's a really nice generator. PSG, it's a PSG 9080. Okay, so it's 80 megahertz. Now that one up there is 300 megasamples per second. So it's got the highest sample per second. This one's 200 meg, just like this one. Okay, so that one's 300 meg. That's impressive. It has the modulations and the frequencies, but it's 14 bits like that one. This one's 16 bit. Okay, so the one up there, you can get the Uni-T for about $239 on Amazon. I think if you go AliExpress, you can get less for under 200, but $239 in comparison to 182, so it's like $50 more than this guy. So for that price, if you don't care about how small it is and moving it around, that right there is a pretty screaming deal. Okay, now let's look at this price. This one is on Amazon, it's $379. So it's about $140 more than that one, but it's 2 bits more resolution. So which gives you that 65,536 steps. So really good resolution. Yeah, so now here's another thing. As far as building your waveforms and that, you get so many points, the memory depth of the waveform you could build. Okay, so I think, so these two both have 4,000 points. So that's, I mean, again, this guy's impressive. But The Cooltron's got 2,000, half as much. So for the price between the Cooltron and this one, it's really hard to beat this guy. So now the Junetech up here, that's got 8,000. So that's why I say for the price, that Junetech, it's bigger. It's the size of this one. But, you know, if to give up the 16 bits to go to 14 bits and all that, that guy, man, it's kind of hard to beat it, you know, especially if you're building your own wave shapes, because that one does go up to 8,000. Now, as far as the voltage, the peak volts, I saw a couple different things for this one. I thought I saw 20 volts peak to peak, but then in another place I saw it was 10 volts peak to peak. So, and again, for sine, square wave, and all that, you're going to see difference. So I think at the lower frequencies, you can get 20 volts on. You can go all the way up to 20, but at 20 meg, you can, you know, all the way up to 20 meg, you can get 10 volts. Out to 40 meg, you get 5 volts. Okay, so that's how this one drops down. This one, instead of 20 meg, it's 10 meg. You get 10 volts, and then you get 5 volts out to 60 meg. Okay. At the lower frequencies, you can get higher amplitude. When you go fast, it just can't quite do the amplitude. So yeah, so 10 megahertz and out to 20 megahertz on this one. Then out to the bandwidth limit, 5 volts and 5. So, and I think the Cooltron, you know, I need to find a better data sheet, but I found 5 volts that goes out to the thing. So it didn't have the low frequency number, but I believe it does the same thing at low frequency. You get higher voltage. So the Junetech, you go up to 11 megahertz, which is 1 megahertz faster than this one, but not the 20 that you can on this one at 10 volts peak to peak. And then it drops down to 5 to 60. So it matches this one to 5 volts at 60. But then out to 80 meg where it's rated, it drops to 3.6 volts. So yeah, so those are the kind of things you want to consider. You know, the amplitude, the modulation, all those things are things that you might not be at the top of your mind when you're picking a generator, guys. And then after you get it, you're like, oh. As a matter of fact, I'm going to show you a wave shape. We're going to look at a wave shape that one of the viewers asked me to look at. We're going to power this guy up and do that, okay? So let's do that. Okay, guys, I propped the 962E on top just so you can kind of see the screen. The actual screen size is the same. So, and they look like pretty much the same software has been written for them, right? Now, here, let's see. This one is set on wave. Let me push that. Okay, so that's on wave, so it shows you different waves here. So if I go to wave here, yeah, so page down. Okay, so that part looks the same. Page up. Very, very similar interface and all that stuff, right? So you got the mode wave utility button down here. You have the mode wave utility button. You got your digits here, same as you do here. On this panel, you got your back and forth arrow with your multi-purpose knob that clicks and all that stuff. You move around, select things. Same here, larger knob, rubberized. This one's rubberized as well, it's just smaller. So 2 channels, and your FSK, CNT, and your sync right here. And it's right all, you know, you got them all right here. So that part's the same. The one part's a little different is you got your USB input here. Now on this one, on this side, you got the power switch, USB power or the 5 volt power, right? And on this one, you have the USB-C. You have this locking thing that, you know, I've never really seen used. I think in universities and that, they might use that. And then you have your power. So very similar. All right, so here we have frequency. You can set frequency, amplitude, offset, and phase. And it's the same thing here, okay? So let's go to frequency, and let's select that, and we use this to select the the largest digit over here. So that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so now I'm just going to go ahead and see how high I can go. So up to 60 meg. Now I could have just typed it in here, right? If I had, it would have been 60 and then megahertz. See, you got your microhertz, megahertz. Okay, so now let's come down here, and we know this is 40 megahertz generator. So we're just going to plug in, we're going to go up frequency, go 40, same thing, megahertz. Now over here, we have our scope, Uni-T Generator. Okay, there we go, and I'll increase that. Well, you know what? Let's go over here and increase the voltage this time. So now, let's come up here and see how high we can go in voltage. Okay, now, because of the frequency, we're limited to that voltage right there, right? Okay, let's go to 40 megahertz. Okay, let's go up to megahertz up here, 40, and type in 40 megahertz, okay? Okay, now let's go down to amplitude, and let's see if I can go 10 volts RMS. It's out of range, okay? So it gave me the 3.56, but let's see if I can go a little higher than that. Nope. So 40 meg, I'm still limited at that. Was it 30 meg that I could go higher? Okay, so it's actually 10 megahertz where I can go up to 10 volts. So let's just do that. Oops, gosh, I went to voltage again. Let's go up. Let's go up here, and let's go down to 10 megahertz. Okay. Now, if I go down to volts, I can go 10 volts, I think. 10 volts, peak to peak, I believe. All right, so now let's go down here and do the same thing. Okay, it says 10 volts peak to peak. We're at 40 meg. So it's capable of doing it all the way at 40 meg. That's was the benefit of this guy, right? You go higher frequency, higher voltage. Even though this one has a higher frequency max, you can't go as high voltage at the max. But this one, yeah, 40 meg, you can go to the 10 volts peak to peak. The funny thing about this one is for 10 volts peak to peak, it's supposed to be limited to 20 megahertz. So that's kind of interesting, right? Let's just go down to here. Yeah, it won't let me go up. I can go down. But I can go up to 10 volts at 40 meg. That's pretty cool. All right, guys. I already started peeling off the display, or the little protective cover. And I should have done that right out of the gate. Look how nice and shiny that is comparison. Yeah. Now they're about the same. Now the displays, they're both 4.3 inch displays, so they are the same. The bottom one looks bigger just because it has a bigger border around it. But the actual display, they're both 4.3 inches. And looks like they have the same kind of GUI interface, right? All that stuff. By the way, I can show you utilities. So the utilities, you have a counter. You can set up the counter, all that kind of stuff. And you have your channel 1, channel 2 settings. Just kind of show you what that looks like. Outputs on, inversions off, sync off, load, high Z. So what if you wanted one channel inverted and one channel not? So you have these different options, okay? And amplitude limit. So you can set the load, set for different frequencies. High Z is kind of where it defaults to. And the scope is high impedance, so that works out. And then it has page down, and you have upper lower return, so page up. So let's see what else you got. Go back to there. You have the tool, which is an arbitrary waveform generator thing. And let's return that. You have a system and phase sync, language beep. So you turn off the beep if you want. It's just on off, okay? So number format, and let's see what we got here. So you got comma or space or none. Okay, so they're using the comma on it. And then backlight, I set it for 100. There's 90. Let's see, there's 30. 30's starting to look a little bit dim. 50's a little bit on the dim side for me. I like 70. I put it at 100 just for the video, so it'd come out more brilliant. And then also you have, okay, screensaver. So I like to turn this off. Man, yeah, because when I'm doing a video, sometimes I've got it on 30 minutes or something, and I have to turn it back on and on all the time. So I just leave it off. So yeah, pretty easy setup, pretty easy to operate. This guy is in a lot of ways an improvement on this one. Now this one does go to higher frequency. You can't go up to 60 meg versus the 40 meg. So anyway, so there's trade-offs, right? The size of this one, obviously very small, compact compared to this one. So there you go. What it looks like from the side view. And there's that nice Uni-T scope. For an 8-bit scope, guys, I mean, this is really, really nice. 2 gigahertz, 200 megahertz. Nice scope. All right, guys, so I had a viewer ask if we could run at 14 megahertz, say sine wave, and do an AM modulation. And he wanted to check to see if the amplitude dropped when we did that. So first of all, let's go look at this one. So I set up the wave. Let's turn off the modulation. Okay, so I set the wave 14 megahertz, okay? And it's 10 volts peak to peak. So then we turn on the modulation and we choose AM. So it's lit up here, okay? And then I chose a higher frequency. I was going to do 1 megahertz, but it defaulted to 200K. So let's try 1 mega. Well, let's try 500 kilohertz. I'm just curious if, whoops. So let's try, see if we can go up any higher in frequency on this. So I've got the 200, nope, 200 is the highest we can go, okay? So that's this guy, okay? 200 kilohertz modulation on a 14 megahertz sine wave. And the voltage did not change, still says 10 volts peak to peak. So let's come down to this one. So on this one, wave shape, 14 megahertz, 20 volts peak to peak. So we can go higher in peak to peak voltage. Then we go to mode, modulation, and we go to, let's see, mod wave, sine. I think that's because AM modulation's already been chosen. So if we go, modulation AM, and look, I got 1 megahertz. So I'm going to go down on the, okay, let's see if we can go above 1 megahertz. No, 1 meg is the limit. So I can do 1 megahertz, which up there I can only do 200K. So even though it's a 60 meg generator, and this is only 40 meg, this has more capability as far as higher frequency and modulation type stuff. So that's what I mean. You really have to check all these different features, how they balance out, which ones actually work for you. Oh, let's go see if it actually did it. So here it is, and it says 19.8 volt, well, 20 volts peak to peak, okay? So that's 5 volts per division, 10 and 10, so 20 volts peak to peak. And so, yeah, it's doing it. And this is the, okay, so let me see. What we have here is 200 nanoseconds, okay? If I do cursors and move this guy to that cursor, then move this one over. Wow, it just kind of skipped over. Okay, so yeah, you have to move the dial a little bit slower or it jumps. Okay, so that's saying 1 microsecond. but that's in time. Let's change it to frequency. And let me see, how do I do that? Hertz. There we go, 1 megahertz. Okay, so that is 1 megahertz. But let's see if the time between each pulse is actually what we thought it was. And it's about 14 megahertz, which is what it was set for, 14 megahertz. So it's probably just the resolution of how I've got these things set. Okay, the cursor set. You know, having to set the cursor is just resolution. Okay, another way you can kind of tell this, guys, here, let me turn the cursor feature off. Okay, so now it's off. So nice clean screen. Now if I raise the trigger level here, so we just capture the peaks of the trigger right over here. Yeah, 978. So if we bring it down just a little bit, so we don't capture one of those side lobes, one of the other ones, just capture the peaks. It says 1 megahertz. So we're 1 megahertz between where we're capturing these trigger points. Okay, so that's 1 megahertz. So, and then if I bring it down here and the trigger in the middle, see I brought the arrow down here in the middle. Well, it's kind of, you can see it's jumping around, but it's 10 megahertz. So it's a little bit harder to have it capture the frequency there. But this frequency counter actually does kind of work when you trigger on just the peaks. Now it says 1.3, 1.2. If I bring it up a little bit, you have to bring just the right spot. I mean, this is just kind of a, I don't know. I'm just kind of showing some trickery with the scope. But yeah, you can just use your cursors to measure that. But yeah, there you go. So that's 14 megahertz with the 1 megahertz modulation. And it's 100% because it drops all the way down the bottom and comes up. Over here we see 100%. So see that depth? If I go down here and say only, let's just say 50%. You can kind of see how it's changed it there. We come over here and you can see how it's changed it. Hey, but you know what though? An interesting thing is now the peaks don't go up to, we don't have 20 volts peak to peak. So now we don't get the peak, the actual peaks. Let's go back over here. Let's go back to waveform. Still says 20 volts peak to peak, but over here, we don't get that. Now, when you say the percentage of modulation, I would think it would only affect the valley here, but maybe it's also affecting the peak. It looks like it does. So it's dropping the peak down too. So the 50% envelope is dropping both ways. So that's kind of an interesting thing. I didn't see that before. So maybe that will help the viewer that asked about this question. All right. So I hope you like that. All right, guys. Hey, what do you think about this stuff? Which generator do you like? This one does have a lot of capabilities, even though, I mean, it is a bit more money than these other generators. I'll put the links to the generators down below. Appreciate using them. It doesn't cost you anything extra to use those links, and it helps support the channel. But you can support the channel for free by hitting the like button or, you know, commenting below. Subscribing, that's a big one. But you can also buy me a coffee, a beer for Rant Friday or Rant Saturday. I don't know, Rant weekend night. And become a Patreon. Links down below. Or you can hit the little button to become a member of the channel. There you go. Hey, thanks, Danny, for being a team member. And thanks to all my YouTube members and my patrons. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching. And thank you, Uni-T, for sending this generator out for me. And yeah, that other nicer generator, it is a bit more, but it has features that you just don't see in other generators. So I just thought it might be cool to show you guys a generator that has so much more capability. Let me know what you think about that, and I'll go back and see if I can borrow one. Yeah, it's kind of a pain to borrow them because you have to ship them back, and it takes time. And man, I'm so busy doing videos. So that's kind of a pain, but I'll do it if you guys want to see that. All right, give me the comments down below. It is another $100–200 more than this one, so, but it has some really cool features. Partially, just give you a little preview, is channel 1, channel 2, you can add them together. That opens up a whole nother game, right? Yeah. So, all right, guys. Hey, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.